Why strong people choose not to respond. It's not what you think. Someone says something that gets under your skin. You feel it rise through your chest, hit your throat, and the perfect response is right there. You know exactly what to say to win. And you say nothing. Most people read that as weakness. Like you didn't know what to say. Like you went blank. But what actually happened is something very few people understand. You chose not to enter. And that distinction changes everything. Because not responding out of fear and not responding out of decision are two completely different acts that look exactly the same from the outside. But internally, one erodes you. The other builds something most people never develop. There's a pattern in people who react to everything. They're not weak. They confuse speed with strength. They think responding fast means responding well. That if someone throws something, you have to throw something back. As if every conversation were a tennis match where letting the ball pass means you lost. But watch what happens when you respond on impulse. You say something. They respond. You raise the intensity. So do they. And suddenly you're arguing about something you didn't even care about 3 minutes ago. You're not defending an idea anymore. You're defending the fact that you already opened your mouth. There's a name for this in psychology. It's called escalation of commitment. Once you've invested energy in a position, your brain needs to justify that investment. So you keep going, not because you're right, because you already started. And now the cost of walking away feels higher than the cost of continuing the fight. People who choose not to respond break that cycle before it begins, not after. There's something no one tells you about silence in a tense conversation. When someone comes at you and you don't respond, the weight of what they said stays with them, not with you. Sit with that for a second. If someone insults you and you fire back, now both of you are carrying something. But if you don't respond, that person is left alone with what they said. And that's far more uncomfortable than anything you could have given them back. Silence isn't passive. It's a mirror. It returns exactly what the other person threw, with no filter, no distortion, and none of the comfort that a fight would give them to justify their aggression. But this doesn't work if you're boiling inside. If your mouth is shut but your mind is building arguments, rehearsing comebacks, replaying what you should have said, then you didn't choose silence. Silence chose you by default while your head stayed at war. There's a difference between going quiet and letting go. Going quiet is closing your mouth with a clenched fist. Letting go is understanding that the conversation doesn't need your energy. And that difference is felt. The other person notices it. You notice it. Your body notices it. Here's something you can use starting today. It's called the inverted 10-second rule. When you feel the urge to respond to something that triggered you, instead of counting to 10 to calm down, which is what everyone says, do the opposite. Use those 10 seconds to ask yourself one question. If I respond, what do I gain that I don't already have? Not what do I gain in general. What do I gain that I don't already have? Because almost every time the answer is nothing. You already know what you think. You already know who you are. You already know that person is wrong. Responding doesn't give you anything new. It just gives you the illusion that you did something. Now let's go deeper. There's a phenomenon most people never recognize in themselves. The addiction to being right. It's not an obvious addiction. It doesn't look like a problem. In fact, the culture rewards it. But it works exactly like any other compulsion. Someone says something incorrect and you feel an internal tension that only gets relieved when you correct them. Not when you understand. Not when you reflect. When you correct. When you prove the other person was wrong. That relief lasts seconds. And then you need another hit. Think about how many arguments you've had in your life where you won the point but lost something bigger. Your calm. The relationship. The other person's respect. Your own peace. You won with your mouth what you lost with everything else. People who choose not to respond don't stop caring about being right. They care. But they learn something most people haven't learned yet. That being right and proving it are two different things. And the need to prove it almost always comes from an insecurity that has nothing to do with the conversation. If you truly know something, you don't need the other person to confirm it. If you're truly strong, you don't need the other person to see it. The need to prove is proportional to internal doubt. The more certain you are, the less you need to say. There's one more level almost no one touches. Not responding is also a way of training your identity. Every time someone provokes you and you choose not to enter, you're teaching your nervous system something new. You're telling it that not every stimulus deserves a response. That you decide what gets in and what doesn't. And that, repeated over time, literally changes who you are. Because you're not what you think. You're what you do with what you think. And if every time you feel an impulse you act on it, then the impulse controls you. It doesn't matter how much you've read about emotional intelligence. It doesn't matter how much you know about psychology. If the impulse commands, you obey. Not responding is the first real act of authority over yourself. Try this for 1 week. Every time you feel the need to respond to something, write it down in a note on your phone instead of saying it. Don't delete it. At the end of the week, read everything you wrote. You'll notice something unsettling. Most of those responses that felt urgent, that felt necessary, that felt like something bad would happen if you didn't say them, mean nothing 7 days later. They were urgent in the moment, but they weren't important. And you were about to spend your energy, your reputation, and your peace on something you wouldn't even remember a week from now. That's what strong people already know. Not that you should never respond, but that almost nothing deserves the response your body is asking you to give in the moment. And now that you see it, you're going to start noticing something uncomfortable. How many times a day your mouth opens before your mind decides if it's worth it? How many times you responded today without choosing to? How many times the reaction was automatic and you just followed it believing it was you who was speaking? Most people never ask themselves that question. And that's why most people keep reacting as if they had no choice.